Hello everyone, another year, another wrestling roundup. I'll be honest, I haven't really watched much wrestling since All In. This is becoming a trend. I'll watch entirely too much wrestling in the first 8 months, get to a show I consider the season finale, and just watch the occasional match that catches my eye. Maybe it's burnout, maybe it's a sense of fulfillment, maybe it's the companies I watch getting worse, but for whatever reason, I've been on another wrestling sabbatical. I've watched a few matches here and there, but nothing has really dragged me all the way back in yet. I haven't even watched a wrestling show live since King of Pro Wrestling. But in those first 8 months, my lord was there some fantastic theater bullshit. For the past 2 years, I put my favorite things into 5 categories with some honorable mentions. This year, there's a 6th. Mostly because I was working on a video that I didn't end up liking the script for, but there was still a segment I really liked and didn't want to go to waste. We'll get to that when we get to it. Fair warning, it's going to be a pretty AEW-centric list this time. Pretty much all of my favorite things happened courtesy of them this year, even if they've been quite shit over the past few months. But with all that said, hi, I'm Aiden, and these are my favorite wrestling things of 2024.
Favorite entrance.
It's showtime. Showtime for the last time.
Man, how good was Sting's last match? I have no qualm saying it was the greatest retirement match of all time. A top 3 spot of the year, incredible emotion, the Young Bucks with the perfect adversaries, and Sting actually retired as champion. You genuinely could not have asked for anything better. The entrance it brought with it was appropriately emotional and a great precursor to the match about to come. It begins with one of the best video packages of the year, a teary look back through Sting's greatest moments throughout his career. It really sucks that WCW couldn't be involved due to WWE having copyright over it, but AEW did work super well with what they had. It's phenomenally directed, lit, and shot from beginning to end. That final close-up with Sting barely even able to look the camera face on as he comes to terms with this being his final match before an invigorated,
Let's do this.
It's just so hype. The lights come back on in the arena as Sting's AEW theme hits and his children enter the stage, dressed as Surfer Sting and Wolfpack Sting, his future representing his past. This must have been such an awesome moment for them. It's an incredibly touching tribute done so well. And then Metallica's Seek and Destroy hits as the icon finally appears, taking it all in before marching to the ring to wrestle one of his greatest matches ever. It's not nearly as extravagant as either one of my previous entrants of the years, but it's the perfect send-off to one of the greatest talents to ever grace this industry. Honorable mentions include Jack Perry at Windy City Riot, The Rock at WrestleMania, and Will Ospreay's final indie entrance of Rev Pro High Stakes.
Favorite promo.
You can call it justice, you can call it hatred, I don't give a fuck what you call it. But it's all I have left.
Hangman Adam Page is one of the greatest characters in professional wrestling history. For the past 3 months, I've been meaning to make a retrospective on his descent into darkness, but I've been having severe writer's block. One day it will happen, but for now I want to talk about possibly the greatest promo I think he has ever cut. His first promo back, fresh off demolishing Jay White, bloodied, bruised, belt in hand, and with a look in his eyes we've never seen before. He addresses the fans, the tournament, and him, the man who took everything he had and everyone turned a blind eye to. The man we chose.
And they never paid for it! They never paid for it! And they loved him for it! They loved him for it! I gave them everything I had! It's been 5 years! I gave them every damn thing that I had! And they chose him! They chose him!
The only thing he has left is to take everything he has. Hangman doesn't care about the tournament, Owen's legacy, his opponents, or even Wembley Stadium. This is just a means to an end, to get to him and burn every single thing he has down. Also, love the camera work here. I think the cameraman was just actually scared of Hangman here and was actively flinching as he got closer. I would be too. The guy doesn't even blink throughout it. Chills every single time. Honorable mentions include Gabe Kidd's Fuck New Japan Pro Wrestling, Bryan Danielson's My Heaven Will Be Standing in This Ring, Hangman fucking burning Swerve's house to the ground, Jeff Jarrett's tribute to Owen Hart for the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, and Mark Briscoe's tribute on the anniversary of Jay Briscoe's passing. Forever reach for the sky.
Favorite moment.
I'm not done talking about Hangman just yet. Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland in an unsanctioned lights out match is one of the most harrowing matches I've ever watched. It's not as great as their first match, not as much of a spectacle of carnage as their second, and is probably better than their third, but what it loses in pacing and quality of spots, it makes up for with these two men's just sheer hatred for one another. This match is gritty, dirty, depressing, and violent, just playing in the mud. It's hard to watch who was once the brightest light in this industry become what he has. And despite everything, despite Hangman burning Swerve's house to the ground, despite him ruining so many other streams just so he could get his revenge, it's hard not to root for him. After everything Strickland did to him last year in an incredibly twisted way, he's earned this. This was his prize. This is all he had left. This is worth it. Right?
What the hell's wrong with him? God, the impact. The sickness. The impact. It's over. Thank God it's over. Thank God the bell rung. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner is the chair by knockout. Hangman Adam Page.
The single most disgusting chair shot in the history of the sport. It splits over Swerve's head with a horrific crack as the referee calls for the bell, and Hangman climbs to the ropes, raises his fist, and celebrates to a stunned silence. He hops down and stares at the man who ruined his life for what feels like an eternity. He leaves the ring as his music plays, not with his head held high, but with a look of contemplation and grief. As he reaches the top of the ramp, he looks back, a million thoughts going through his head. What have I done? Was it enough? Did I go too far?
So glad I got to be a part of it.
No, wait, I know he's coming. He's not coming back here. No. It looked like he was.
When was the last time a wrestler had the capacity to genuinely terrify an audience? This is one of my favorite moments in the history of the medium. The crowd screaming in terror as he realizes the answer to was it worth it? No. And it has cost you everything. The championship, the length of your career, your dignity, and the people. And upon that, the Hangman screams. It is a genuine crime how AEW followed up on this. Honorable mentions include Nigel McGuinness returning to the ring at All In, Zack Sabre Jr. winning the G1 Climax and IWGP title, Miyu Watanabe winning the Princess of Princess Championship, and Bryan Danielson finally winning the AEW World Championship.
Favorite pay-per-view.
It's showtime! You know what that means! AEW Revolution is live!
So last year I claimed that Revolution 2023 was possibly the greatest pay-per-view AEW's ever put out. And 3 whole shows in 2024 might just have topped it. But just barely. Revolution was once again its best. What is it about the fucking green texture that makes AEW fire on all cylinders every single time? I'll give it up, it was really hard to choose between this and All In, but while All In may be the singular most satisfied I've ever been with a pro wrestling show, Revolution barely ekes it out in match quality and pacing. I'll go through it match by match like I always do, it's almost entirely all killer, no filler. The opener was Christian Cage versus Daniel Garcia. A very solid build into a very solid match. Interference was a bit much and the pacing was pretty WWE-esque, but Daniel Garcia is such a compelling wrestler and the hope spots are so good that it's overlookable. I really enjoyed rewatching it. It is immediately followed by the show's first match of the year candidate. Eddie Kingston and Bryan Danielson having their 4th and best singles encounter in AEW. While the semi-final showdown in last year's Continental Classic was about Eddie slaying the dragon, this match was about Eddie earning the dragon's respect. A simple, effective story done very, very well. While the Mad King's Puro cosplay has been a bit much for some, including myself, I thought it was definitely at its best here. Eddie is ridiculously over, every move carries such an intense amount of weight behind it, and the pacing is near perfect. Danielson's strategy of working Eddie's arm so his chops are less effective, having Eddie change his strategy to prepare Bryan for the powerbomb, was so perfectly done. Great selling and great work. The post-match of Bryan finally shaking Eddie's hand was the best payoff you could ask for. The number 1 contender All-Star 8-man scramble match, Jesus Christ what a name, was entirely fine. I wish this was able to just stay the Meat Madness match, and frankly, I can't remember why it didn't. What we got was an entertaining, if kind of sloppy spot fest that was placed really well on the card. Great cooldown from how hot they were for the previous match. Chris Jericho being here was a big mistake though. And as an aside, Chris Jericho sucks and he has since 2021. Please stop giving him these spots. Roderick Strong versus Orange Cassidy was always going to be the most underrated match of the night. It's sometimes easy to forget, but Roddy is one of the best to ever lace up a pair of boots. And Orange, despite constantly over-delivering, is still somehow underrated. To be fair, he is pretty overexposed. The outcome of this match was very predictable, but Roddy was the perfect man to end OC's poor second reign as international champion, working over his back perfectly to set up for the end of Heartache. And OC sold everything like an absolute pro, and despite some great hope spots, never stood a chance. That gut-wrench powerbomb on the turnbuckle is something else, man. Great stuff. Also, Kyle O'Reilly returned after the match, and I screamed so loud, I missed this man so much. You know, if this match actually led to anything, I think it'd be a lot better remembered. Or remembered at all. Which kind of sucks, because it was legitimately one of the best tag matches of the year. Really loved Mox and Claudio coming out in Legion of Doom gear. Very cute tribute on a night meant to tribute one of the greatest legends to ever do it. The match starts a bit slow, but as soon as Dax starts bleeding, it never stops, never stopping. Claudio is the absolute star of the show here. We know how amazing of a tag wrestler is because of his time in WWE and the multiple great tag teams he was a part of while there, but he popped out and showed off here. By the end of the match, it might as well be a tornado tag match, as it's just awesome double team move after awesome double team move. It's nearly unrecognizable as a slow, deliberate match from the start, and it earned it. It's built amazingly throughout. Watch it again. Great match. Tony Storm versus Deonna Purrazzo was the only weak match on the card. Only 12 minutes, crowd wasn't into it, no real memorable moments. Best part about it was the entrance. Super mid. But it's followed by Revolution's second match of the year candidate, Konosuke Takeshita versus Will Ospreay. I love this match so much. There was never any doubt that this match would be godlike, but I still just wasn't prepared for how damn good it was. And while it's Will's debut match, Takeshita is the star. Konosuke Takeshita is the best in-ring wrestler in the world right now, and it's just a damn shame AEW doesn't show that off more. I know everyone remembers that turnbuckle brainbuster, and I mean, come on, look at it. Ospreay himself said it's the most painful bump he's ever taken. But for me, the best spot of the match was that Oz cutter into the Blue Thunder Bomb. Holy shit, man, it ruled. Insane spot after insane spot that's pulled off with such insane precision and impact every single time. There's not much of a story to this match. It's pure hard-hitting, high-flying, action figure bullshit, and I really couldn't ask for more. It's the kind of match you show someone to get them into wrestling. An instant classic. The triple threat match for the AEW World title is one of the most interesting matches of the year, I think. It was always going to have a bit of a weird vibe, as Hangman and Swerve was the hottest feud in the industry at that point, and Joe kind of felt like a third wheel despite being the champion at the time. But I think the story told here was a great one. Swerve wants the belt, Hangman is letting his obsession with Swerve get the better of him, and Joe just wants people to kill. Despite the third wheel comparison, he is still the biggest threat in this match, coming in constantly and just killing the other two before they could get their hands on each other, leading into one of the best finishes of the year, with Hangman tapping out because he would rather die than see Swerve get anything in life. Unfortunately, the match was a bit marred by a tired crowd and a rough start as the three men struggled to get a good pace. Could have been better, but still good. And then, the match of the night, and final match of the year candidate on the show, the main event, the goodbye to an icon, the Young Bucks versus Darby Allin and Sting. I've already talked about this match in this video, but it bears repeating, it is the greatest final match in the history of this great sport. The Young Bucks have their best performance in years here, as the most dickheaded heels you could ever imagine, wearing suits not just in their entrance, but all the way to the ring and throughout the match. The EVP gimmick may have gotten worse over time due to inconsistent booking, but the early days of it were so good. They're the perfect adversaries for the anti-authority hoodlums that Darby and Sting are. And after this year, I'm comfortable saying that Darby Allin, along with Adam Page, is the single greatest wrestler AEW has ever built. His role is played to perfection, and he has easily the best spot in it. I remember watching this and thinking he had actually just died. I cannot believe this was a thing done on a wrestling show. Somehow, it wasn't even the most insane thing he did this year. But Sting. Fuck, man, his efforts to fight on even after Darby left brought me to tears. Constant kickouts like he had here can be really frustrating, but these were the last embers of an icon burning brighter than ever. That spot where they parody "I'm sorry, I love you" with
These are not strange chickens. They shouldn't be in there getting battered around like this.
into no selling the double super kick is pure run through a wall hype. And the best part is, the icon wins. He pins Mac Jackson and retires as champion. You could not ask for a better ride into the sunset. The only damper, the only one, is that Ric Flair is involved. Fuck Ric Flair. But beyond that, one of the best no DQ matches ever, one of the best matches AEW will ever do, and the best final match of all time. It won't be topped. Incredible match, incredible show, incredible wrestling. Honorable mentions go to Marigold Summer Destiny, the Despair Invitational, DDT Judgment, TJPW Grand Princess, AEW Dynasty, and AEW All In.
Favorite wrestler.
Bryan Danielson is the greatest professional wrestler of all time. I will eulogize him at the end of this section, but I just cannot believe the insane quality of this man's career. This year alone on my ratings, he was involved in 8 Match of the Year candidates across 3 different companies, with 3 of them in my top 5 of the year. Unreal output from an unreal man. Honestly, I'm not even sure I can do this recap properly. I really don't think I'm that good of a writer. I don't even like writing that much. I just kind of splurge words on a page and hope people like them. And with how much Dragon did this year, I'm bound to miss something. But you can't know unless you try. It'll be a long and messy one, but I hope you enjoy it all the same. The American Dragon's year began in Japan, his first time ever in the Tokyo Dome in a rematch against Kazuchika Okada in by far the best match of Wrestle Kingdom 18. Truthfully, I don't believe these two have that great chemistry with each other, but the sheer aura of these two titans of the industry getting to actually fight each other at full strength in a stadium worthy of their clash was enough to carry it. I loved the dynamic with both out not to prove who was better like their first one, but to get revenge. Bryan for his broken arm, and Okada for being humiliated by being forced to tap. Hearing yes chants in the Tokyo Dome was one of those special moments that will only ever happen once. It's hypnotizing. I don't think it was the classic I really wanted from these two, but what we got was worth it. This wouldn't be the only match he had in Japan that week, as he would team up with stablemate Jon Moxley, Tomohiro Ishii, and Kazuchika Okada himself in a match against the Mighty Don't Kneel. The match itself was just an alright typical New Japan All-Star tag, but seeing those 4 in a ring at the same time together felt like watching the Avengers in theaters for the first time again. A special feeling. A month later, Bryan and the rest of the Blackpool Combat Club would enter into a feud with invading company CMLL. This was one of the coolest things to happen in AEW's short history, and it is a damn shame it didn't last longer. It gave Lucha Libre an extensive, much-needed big spotlight in a major American wrestling promotion, and gave it to a company that has deserved it for a very long time. Watching CMLL live is not personally my thing. I just don't enjoy the camera work, rough sound mixing, and inconsistent lighting. Those are all purely production issues. The wrestling there is some of the best you'll ever find. I got introduced to wrestlers like Hechicero, Mystico, and Voladar Jr. because of this, and I really couldn't be happier. Speaking of, that match Bryan had with Hechicero on a random episode of Collision was a terrific TV match, and it's a shame they never ran it back. It felt like they were capable of a lot more. But during that feud, Bryan would take a quick detour back to Japan for a rematch of the greatest technical match of all time, against Zack Sabre Jr. This is one of the greatest matches of all time. I prefer their first encounter purely because it was on my birthday, but on an objective level, this is miles above their already phenomenal first encounter. It is 32 minutes long, and it never felt like there was a single second of downtime. Every move mattered, everything flowed so perfectly, down to the last detail. I could watch the transitions for literal days. Pro wrestling is at its best when it's 2 steps away from gay sex, and these two were fucking. I am so happy this rematch happened in Japan because while the Washington Wrestle Dream crowd was terrific, hearing a Japanese crowd, who always appreciate technical masterclasses more, chant, "This is awesome" and "Fight forever," was just unreal. It felt like a match only these two could ever pull off. Bryan's offense at first being slow and methodical, targeting Zack's legs so his surprise pins and submissions would be less effective, and then becoming more frustrated and desperate on the account that Zack just would not stay down. He goes for his signature Busaiku knee to finish it like he did at Wrestle Dream, but gets counted and rolled up for the 1-2-3 by Zack Sabre Jr. Just give it every single star in the galaxy. The frontman would go on to have a phenomenal year on his own, going on the run of his career by winning the G1 Climax and IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Whenever Bryan returns to wrestling, these two have to have a third match, probably with the submission stipulation. We need to truly find out who is once and for all the greatest technical wrestler of all time. Going back from Japan, Danielson would enter into a short feud with Eddie Kingston, entirely based around respect. I already talked about it in my Revolution review minutes earlier, I don't need to repeat myself, it was fantastic. What I want to talk about before we go back to the American Dragons World Tour is probably the most emotional match of the year for me. Katsuyori Shibata versus Bryan Danielson. The first ever Miracle of Neuroscience match. I think it's fair to say Shibata's been ridiculously underutilized in AEW, and with matches like this, it's impossible to see why. This happened on an episode of Collision and was my TV match of the year. But man, I just wish it happened on a Ring of Honor pay-per-view. A genuine dream match between two men who had to fight for that dream to wrestle again. Two men who continued to fight on, not to be remembered as men who had their great careers cut short, but continued to be the greatest in spite of that. Exceedingly hard-hitting, emotional affair that was almost everything I wanted it to be. I need them to run it back at some point. Now back to globetrotting. The conclusion to the BCC CMLL feud would conclude in another match of the year candidate, a 4-on-4 tag match in the iconic Arena Mexico. Wheeler Yuta would unfortunately have to be replaced by Matt Sydal due to being injured, but every single person in this match killed it. Claudio Castagnoli is the singular best base in pro wrestling history, and seeing him get to mix it up with luchadors is guaranteed to be a treat. It is so good that this match happened in the place it did. While I hate CMLL production, Arena Mexico is one of the coolest places in wrestling history. It has an atmosphere like nothing else. It just oozes importance. Even with CMLL's shitty audio mixing, the crowd could be heard crystal clear here. They lost it for everything that happened. It's just so much fun. My only problem is that this match was too short. Absolutely should have gone at least 20 minutes. But what we got was worth every second. The heart of this match, of course, lies within the American Dragon. You can tell how much he loves this, how happy he is to be here, how much he wants to wrestle everyone there. That spot with Mystico where they just trace C and no chance is one of my favorites of the year. But he especially wants to grapple up with his favorite of all time, Blue Panther. And 5 days later, he would get that chance. Now admittedly, I hadn't actually watched this match until I did research for this video, and I regret that immensely. It's not a match of the year candidate like the 4-on-4, it's too long and the lighting is rough, but it's just awesome to see the greatest of all time wrestlers idol. It's the kind of thing you'll watch and just get all fuzzy inside. Blue Panther's offense was a bit rough at points, but he was doing phenomenally for someone who is 64 years old. Some of the bumps he took genuinely shocked me, and his selling was top tier. And again, that Arena Mexico atmosphere. There's nothing like it. I loved this match. Okay, so far this part of the script is already the longest, and we're only in April. Fucking hell, what a year. He isn't even close to his peak yet, either. Oh, wait, shit, this is when Dynasty happened. Damn. I'll come back to this later. I'm pretty sure you can figure out why. But I want to give a quick shout out to the bunkhouse brawl he and Claudio had against Takeshita and Fletcher on a Collision. Man, Dragon was really rocking that show this time, huh? A very, very fun, very underrated match. Can't believe they did this the night before the pay-per-view. This is also where he cut one of the best promos of his entire career. Knowing that this was his last full-time year of wrestling, he cuts an impassioned promo about what his life will look like after wrestling. It's a promo that made me cry. I am actually going to skip forward a bit here. Originally had a segment about being sad about how the Elite storyline planned out and how AEW has an addiction to fumbling when it's on fire. But that's not the point of this segment. It's to appreciate Bryan Danielson and the phenomenal year he had. Dragon's May and June were pretty uneventful outside of Anarchy in the arena anyways. It was a very fun spot fest with rough camera work as it always is. I don't have much more to say about it beyond Bryan doing the yes kicks while Darby's lifeless corpse hangs in the background is one of the funniest visuals in wrestling history. But here we are, what I would consider the peak of Bryan Danielson's entire 25-year career. His journey to All In London and finally claiming the All Elite Wrestling World Championship. I think 2024's Owen Hart Cup is the best bracket-style tournament AEW has ever put on. Every match was great, every participant was amazing, and most importantly, the winner was genuinely unpredictable. You could have legit made a case for every person in that bracket winning, but the two who most deserved to by far were Hangman Adam Page and Bryan Danielson. Bryan easily had the best string of matches in the tournament on the way to the finals. First, a great match against Shingo Takagi at Forbidden Door, and then the match of the tournament against Pac on Dynamite. Seriously, go back and watch this one. One of the most underrated of the year. But the man he met in the finals was a very different Hangman Adam Page. Hanger and Dragon had met 3 times before this. Their first match was a draw, the second going in Adam's favor, and most recent one going in Bryan's. This wasn't that same man. This was a focused, vengeful, deadly Hangman Adam Page. It was a brutal affair. Hangman made Bryan bleed buckets upon buckets of blood for getting in his way, even whipping him with his belt and tying it around his neck when the referee went down, choking the American Dragon until his face turned blue. But somehow, someway, he dug deep and reversed the submission he was in into a pin. Many say Hangman should have won this, including myself in the moment. His feud with Swerve was too hot to be anywhere but the main event of the biggest show of the year. But with what we have now, I think it was entirely worth pushing it back to All Out. Bryan immediately entered into a program with the then AEW World Champion, Swerve Strickland. While this is Danielson's story, Swerve could not have been a better adversary for this feud. Dude had probably my favorite world title reign of the year. I've always thought Swerve is at his best when he's in full supervillain mode, and outside of the Hangman feud, this is his best work. While he's far more respectful towards Bryan, he is still a condescending, calculating, confident bastard. Their first segment together was top tier stuff. Swerve at first coming off as respectful before pulling the rug out from underneath everyone, poking at Bryan's insecurities, his losses, injuries, and how little time he has left. At the end, he promises Bryan will not be walking out as champion, or at all. And Bryan takes him up on this. If he loses, he will never ever wrestle again. It's on now. Title versus career. On the Go Home Dynamite before All In, a promo segment officiated by Nigel McGuinness is held. There is not a single person who hates Bryan Danielson more than Nigel McGuinness, and even he is scared of what Swerve's saying. The most dangerous man in pro wrestling cuts into what he'll do at All In, and how Bryan is going to be after it. Even if Bryan ever comes back to wrestling after All In, he'd be there. In his nightmares, in his matches, hell, maybe even in his house. He is making sure that the greatest of all time can never do anything related to wrestling again without the fear of the boogeyman. Danielson's response? What he does best. Kick his fucking head in, and to finally declare what everyone's known for so long.
I'm the best wrestler in the world. And I have been for the last 20 years.
The stage is set. The biggest show of the year. The highest possible stakes. The hottest possible feud. All In. Needless to say, it's another one of the greatest matches of all time. Fuck, I wish I could have been in that stadium that night. It's as perfect as this stupid theater bullshit can get. Bryan getting to enter to his Ring of Honor theme, The Final Countdown, in front of a crowd entirely behind him, and Swerve having an entrance of the year contender, numerous callbacks to both men's pasts, the showmanship, the storytelling, it's the ultimate babyface versus the ultimate heel. That moment where Bryan gets his anime power-up from his family, hits the Busaiku knee, only for Swerve to smirk, dust off his shoulder, and hit the house call into the greatest kick out of the year. God, just fuck, it's too good. Wrestling should not be allowed to be this good. I can't put into words how I felt watching the GOAT lock in the rings of Saturn and tap the current champion out to finally become what he should have so long ago. All Elite Wrestling World Champion. It's perfectly paced, perfectly built, and perfectly earned. Wrestling has numerous problems, but when it's good, when it allows itself to be this, it is the best damn thing in the world. Bryan Danielson has an ability very, very few wrestlers have. He makes you believe like this is real. Like every match is the most important he'll ever wrestle. Because to him, it absolutely is. We are not worthy of quality that consistent. Unfortunately, Dragon's title reign was rather underwhelming. The highlight of it was a match against a returning Nigel McGuinness at Grand Slam that wasn't for the title, but it was just such a treat to see these two fight again. Seeing Nigel be able to wrestle again might be my favorite thing from this year. 2 months later, Bryan Danielson was murdered live on pay-per-view by Jon Moxley after being beaten for the AEW World Championship at WrestleDream. And genuinely, I couldn't imagine a more American Dragon way to go out. Not out with a bang in a great goodbye match, but getting injured and having the audience genuinely fear for his life. He really loves doing that shit. Thank you for everything, Bryan. That is one more match I gotta talk about. Honorable mentions go to Darby Allin, Swerve Strickland, Saray, Zack Sabre Jr., and Will Ospreay.
Favorite match.
April 21st, this is about finding out who is the best wrestler in the world. And let me tell you, because my name is Will Ospreay, and I am on another level.
When I die, my heaven will be standing in this ring, bleeding in front of all you people.
Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay. This is not only my favorite match this year, but it might be my favorite match of all time. I don't think I can give it higher praise than that. Maybe it's overrated, maybe it's recency bias, but I truly don't care because this is as close to a religious experience as I will ever have. The two current best wrestlers in the world having an exhibition match the fans have prayed for to prove once and for all who is better, all for the love of the game. It gave me that exact same feeling I had watching Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn in NXT for the first time all those years ago. It's the purest form of this great sport. The start of the match sets the tone with a pure shot of adrenaline. The crowd in St. Louis are on their feet screaming holy shit before the bell even rings. The two men stare each other down before going to their corners. Ospreay can't stop his feet from tapping, and as the bell rings, instead of locking up, he screams along with the band. He is just so hyped this is happening, he can't contain his excitement, and Bryan is more than happy to give it to him. They lock eyes, and it's on. The crowd for this match is just one of my favorites ever. They're never quiet for even a second. It's fair to say, even though Dynasty had one of the best cards of the year, this is the match most of them paid to see. And damn did they get their money's worth. What follows is a 33-minute masterclass of pure guts. The best wrestler of all time versus the best wrestler of today. I understand a lot of people probably didn't vibe with the no-selling and constant back and forth of this match, but it moved mountains for me. I love that you can see the dynamic of this match set by a single sequence. Ospreay manages to trip Danielson while they're both locked up and get him in an ankle lock. but Will's specialty has never been in technical wrestling, so Bryan easily rolls through and flips him the bird. Will smiles and chops him. There it is. Danielson dominates the more grounded parts of the match, but if Will gets any semblance of an inch, he'll take it a mile. It's great stuff. Also, my god, that Oz cutter into the Psycho knee counter was just unbelievable, wasn't it? Most of the spots in this match are. The avalanche tiger suplex, the Oz cutter on the apron, Ospreay fucking countering a triangle choke into a Styles clash, the crowd fucking chanting, it's wonderful. And what it ends with is my single favorite spot ever performed in a squared circle. With both men downed after 30 minutes of fighting spirit, Danielson slowly rises to the left corner of the ring, raising his arms with his fingers pointed to the sky. Ospreay rises, stumbling to the right corner of the ring, eyes locked purely on the goat. Ospreay removes his armband. Danielson locks his eyes back. In this moment, there is no space or time. It's just these blokes, these men, these wrestlers, drawing their swords to decide in one last strike who is the best in the world. It's magic. Pure, unfiltered magic. The crowd reaction, Ospreay scream, Danielson sell. I rewatched this like 60 times rewatching this match for this video, and I'll probably rewatch it 60 more times while editing this. Ospreay hits the Tiger Driver 91, one more hidden blade for the road, and it's over. It's the kind of match that will make you believe superheroes are real and are living and breathing right before your eyes. I love the beautiful sport of pro wrestling. Honorable mentions go to Chris Brooks and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Yuki Uno and Mao, Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland, Mayu Iwatani versus Sayuri, Eddie Kingston versus Bryan Danielson, War Dogs versus United Empire, Mayu Iwatani versus Saray, Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson, Sting and Darby Allin versus the Young Bucks, and Zack Sabre Jr. versus Bryan Danielson. And that's another year in the books. Once again, I got this video out late, as I always do, but that's okay. At least I got this one out in January. Hopefully. Next video will be every game I played last year, and after that, I'll finally make that Fire Emblem 4 video. God knows when that will be out. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope your 2025 is as good as you want it to be. Take care of yourself.